Hello, welcome to this Telegraph live stream. I'm Charlie Morgan. I've got Brian Moore here with me. And a bit later on, we're going to be taking in the deciding test between Australia and England. You can join the conversation, please do, by commenting below the line, on the live blog, by tweeting either of us. Please make sure you do. Brian, thanks for coming in.
That's all right.
For the start.
I had a heavy night last night with the Navy people. So forgive my appearance. I'm sad.
You look great. We're about 10 minutes away from kickoff in Sydney. Let's start in Wellington before we talk anything Australia or England. An epic test match. Ireland beat...
The best thing about the Ireland series win, and it's the first one, the historic one, is there's no element of luck in this.
No.
You know, they weren't fortunate. They took it, they went there, and especially after losing the first test, and they thoroughly deserved it. I was just saying that they shouldn't forget what Joe Schmidt did. I mean, Andy Farrell will rightly get a lot of the praise for this, but it was Joe Schmidt that took them from being, perpetual almosts into getting consistency, getting them playing a certain way, and Andy Farrell has come along, carried that on and added his bits. So, and it's all been through a system which hasn't got great numbers. They just make the best of what they can do, and they've got the system working perfectly, and as I say, thoroughly deserved.
Those first two wins over New Zealand were under Schmidt, and it felt like they broke down a little bit of a psychological barrier.
Yeah, I'm sure he did. Once you've got players who, I played against New Zealand 5 times. I won 2, lost 3, and the first time I played, I found myself under pressure, thinking, my God, I've got to play quicker and making mistakes because it was the aura there. And now that's gone. Now you've got several people. There's a difference between thinking you can do something and knowing you can do something because you've done it. You can think all you like, I would do this, I would do that. You don't know till you get in that situation. A lot of these players now know, we can beat New Zealand, and not only that, can beat them away.
If you haven't caught up with the game, please do so. It's phenomenal, and actually,
if you were trying to disguise waiting for the result, sorry, it's gone now.
Sorry, we've blown that out of the water. Spoilers gone already. But no, 4 tries for Ireland. 2 of them through phase play, that really intricate stuff that's become their hallmark. 2 of them through a driving maul. So actually, with a blip in the middle, New Zealand came back at the start of the second half, and they looked like a side that was playing for their head coach. Or whether that puts
the driving maul for Ireland.
Yeah.
And Paul O'Connell has been seminal in finessing this. They've been quite good at it for a while, but I think Paul O'Connell's just brought the edge to it. And this is one of the things about the England team. England used to be so good at driving mauls. The then IRB tried to change the laws to stop them occurring because we couldn't stop them. We stop us doing it. And it's the one ploy that actually drags defenders in and creates space for backs. And they've not used it well enough, in my opinion, for a long time. There were signs in the last test against Australia that they did, and I just hope today that they use it quite judiciously as well.
You can maybe draw a bit of a parallel between where Ireland were at the start of 2020, where they were sort of fumbling to get this fluency in their phase play, with where England are now. But I remember George Ford's always a really interesting guy to listen to when he talks about rugby, and he was saying at that stage, start of 2020 and 2021, he would say, look, everything's coming through Sexton, so it makes it fairly predictable. And the holy grail of attacking in phase play is unpredictability. And now what Ireland have done is they've developed this way of playing through various playmakers. So someone like Matt Canson coming off his wing, someone like Hugo Keenan at fullback, another really good ball player, Gary Ringrose when he's there, even Bundy Aki developed those skills. That, as we say, that unpredictability, that variety is what England is striving for now, and it's going to be really interesting to see whether
I don't like this word unpredictability. Because to me, you do what is there, so it's predictable in the sense that you do the right thing. Yeah. Unpredictability suggests to me not planned, and so on. You can plan lots of things to create the openings, which you then see what has occurred in front of you.
Is deception a better word?
Organisation. There are lots of words. When you see teams playing like Ireland, you can see the hallmarks, you can see the framework of how they take the ball forward. And the biggest thing in rugby today, I believe, is how you carry the ball. Can you create with the defenders? Can you create doubt? Because defenders can only cover so much. You can't cover every eventuality but you've got to have all the options there. So if you've got runners inside and outside in the deep ball and contact and slightly, the easiest thing to defend is just the one-out bash with people hit you and double carry you. And when teams like Ireland, when they do that well, they make defenders question what they're going to do. And, they get the wrong shoulder, half a shoulder, and you get over the gain line. Now, you might not break the gain line if you do, fine. But the point is, if you make ground, then all the defensive line has to go back another 2 or 3 yards further, which is difficult. You do that 3 times quickly. Momentum has gone, and someone doesn't get in position, or someone is offside. And that's what you do. But you can plan the way you take the ball forward, and it's when you get the opportunity, then the unpredictability, not unpredictable. Then what comes is you do the right thing.
Yeah.
But that's not unpredictable in this sense. You created that opportunity. It's unpredictable in that you can't label when the opportunity will come and what it will be. But you can script creating that, and then people have got to do the right thing that's in front of them.
Was interesting, certainly, about the second 2 tests, I thought, was that the All Blacks uncharacteristically look predictable in their face play, and that's something they're going to have to go back to.
And this was due to Irish pressure the majority of the time.
In the first test,
they made a lot of basic errors. You don't see your handling errors, things like that.
Set piece errors in the first test. They fed off. I was doing a report for that from back here, obviously. In the first test, they fed off Ireland errors, and that was a typical sort of counter-punching All Blacks performance, which is they're fantastic in transition. That's the trendy word that coaches use. That transition between defence and attack. Carved up Ireland there. They couldn't do that in the second 2 tests because Ireland's mistakes went through the floor, and actually when they were trying to generate that momentum themselves in phase play, they found
and the other thing is Ireland under Joe Smith were famous for going could go 18 phases without making mistakes, put pressure on that way. The box kicking game, the kick and chase game was very good, put pressure that way. Now it's slightly different now, but they've still got in them the ability to just keep going. Do another phase, and we'll manufacture a situation where we're now in control again to do what we want to do to create the opening. Whereas it's before, you see a lot of the things in New Zealand uncharacteristically, and when teams go behind, they force things.
For sure.
I have to I'm the one that's got to make the break, get my hands free, gets knocked down and so on. Whereas when you're comfortable with Ireland, say, well, we'll just do it this way and it will come. We don't need to change it. And England, when they play well, they don't need to. They're looking for offloads, but they've got to be the right ones. There's a phrase in Britain. It was a 50-50 chance. Well, how does it never work then? If it's 50-50, if it's 50-50, it'd work half the time, wouldn't it? It doesn't. So it's not 50-50.
If you're an Ireland fan, are you worried at all that you've picked too early?
No. Look, the real comfort for all the other Northern Hemisphere teams is Ireland's World Cup record is dreadful.
Yep.
Absolutely dreadful, particularly in the latter few tournaments where every tournament, I and other people said, watch Ireland, could really, and they've just always failed. Now, you don't get this feeling with this group, and I'm sure that there will be no way, I'm sure they won't, but that is still in the back, they've still got to crack that, yes.
I think a lot of it is, a lot of their chances, their potential, is wrapped up in Johnny Sexton. I think that's obvious, but a lot of those parts.
I'm less worried about Sexton in this sense. I didn't think he was durable enough because of concussion and other things to go there. But the way he's been shielded and the way he looks after himself and central contracts and whatever, I don't have any doubt now that physically, barring an unfortunate accident for him, that he will be there and he'll be he'll be good enough at that age and without any problem at all.
That was the reason Warren Gatland gave for not bringing him to South Africa, the Lions, wasn't it? That he couldn't potentially last those three tests back to back, but he's done that and he's done brilliantly. On to Australia, England. If that felt like a test series in New Zealand of two sides, going at it right at the top, sort of at the elite bracket of test sides. This, I said before the test, I wrote that this felt like a bit of a mid-table
That's a championship. This is like the Premier League title, and they playing for Europe.
Yeah, top six.
Yeah,
well, which they are, fifth and sixth in the world. Yeah. What have you made of the series so far? I'll take you back to something you wrote at the start of the a fortnight ago in one of your columns. You said, "I'm sick of writing this. You're sick of reading it, but England need." I'm paraphrasing it. No, I'm not paraphrasing that. That's an actual expression.
And again, centres, back three, back row.
And you said, "Where's the power coming from? Is it Joe Singer? He's been in and out after the first test. The back five balance. You question whether."
Well, I said,
Laws could be in at lock.
What will we learn? What will we know after this series?
Yeah.
If they win today, and it still is an if. I'm not confident as people seem to be on TV, but if there's an if. It is still there. We don't know who the centre partnership is going to be, or the 10, 12 axis, or the 13, the 14, 15 and 11, and the back row. And it's very, It's concerning because if we don't know, Eddie might know, they might know. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure they do, and that's a problem because you can see Ireland. Look, you can name their team now, bar one or two, and he can change people in and out. And you can say, oh, they've done that for this reason. You can't do it with England anywhere near.
So you mentioned there being able to the advantage of having a settled side. That brings us on to one of the readers' questions actually very early. Really, it's from Steve Bell. It's the first one that got left below the article when it went up on the Telegraph website. Really curious what Brian and Charlie think about the value of a settled first choice 15 in the modern game. Clive Woodward mentions it continuously, and it's always Farrell at 10, Slade at 12, Tulagi at 13. While I can see the value in having that stability, like the 2003 side enjoyed, or Brian's side enjoyed in 1995, I wonder whether the game is slightly different now, both tactically and with a high attrition rate. Is Eddie best to keep chopping and changing? Does that unsettle players or keep them on their toes?
Well, look at all the World Cup winning sides. From 12 months out, you can see their side.
Yeah,
it's virtually the same, and there's a reason for that. Because no matter how good you are, if you're playing with someone, the more you play together, the better understanding comes, and the units become better. Then the interaction between the units and the overall team performance. It's axiomatic. It's obvious. And no, you can't just throw people in. And it's not a question. It's not a question of as the game changed. You look at the Ireland side. You, as I said before, you can give or take depending on how he wants to play things. You can tell what the side's going to be because he's made his choices, and people have to fight their way in. And it's the same with other teams. France, to a large extent now, you can pick. And this never used to be the case with France. You've no idea what was coming with France. And that's one of the reasons he kept failing. But you can now pick 13, can't you, probably?
Yeah. And tactically as well, they're so solid.
Yes. And that's the reason. No, you can't just play anyone.
I think you're coloured by your experiences, aren't you? Especially as a head coach. And Eddie Jones, this plays into what he's done for this game perfectly. Because I think between the World Cup semi-final and the final, he'd previously changed up the side for the quarter-final, and then they played fantastically. He then changed that up. So the midfield for the quarter-final against Australia, which England were brilliant in, by the way, was Farrell at 10, Tuilagi and Slade. He changed that up for the semi-final against New Zealand, brought Ford and Farrell back in with Tuilagi, Slade to the bench, and he kept that side for the final against South Africa. And I think that scarred him.
Well, I've chatted to him about this, and sometimes things just don't go right. Because, tell you what, if it had changed the side and it had gone like that, people said, you never change your winning side. It's absolutely, it's a fundamental in sport, never change your winning side. And a lot of people said that. And I believe they had the right to start. Sometimes things just go wrong. In the first 5 minutes of the World Cup, they made 5 mistakes that they'd not made. Drop the kick-off.
Bit of an polar passing to nobody.
Laws gets penalised on the ground for lying there for 2 seconds, where, South Africa going 8. Then Vunipola passed it out the back of his hand for a pick-up from number 8 into midfield to the way. Ben Youngs passed the ball into touch. But thinking, what you've made more errors in this game than you have in the whole of other games. And it started like that, and then the injury to Sinclair, and South Africa got on top in the scrum, and it was gone. And they hung on. You remember they had just about a chance just before half time in that phase of play, and then Ben Youngs passed the ball into touch again actually, and that was gone. But I never thought they were in that game. And sometimes it happens. I'm not sure what Jones could have done about that. I don't. He's going to carry the can because he should, because he's coach. But the players themselves, sometimes he just doesn't go right. And South Africa, Warren Gatland, despite him having a barber, he said, "Well, have they played the final?" That was as good a performance as England have ever played, I think. And they would have nilled New Zealand had it not been for that overthrow. So it's a difficult one.
To bring that back to today, you've had 2 enforced changes in the pack with Itoje and Underhill, who will be big misses.
Those are big misses.
You've got Ollie Chessum coming in and Lewis Ludlam coming in, 2 real scrappers who are coming off the back of really big domestic seasons for Leicester and Saints respectively. But he's made an unchanged, an unenforced change as well, bringing Jack Van Polkley out, who was fantastic, I thought, last week to start, and bringing Danny Kerr back in. Now, he's rationalised that, and this is a very Eddie Jones point, he's rationalised that as Paul Williams, who's a New Zealand referee, he thinks that he gives a few penalties early on for tacklers not rolling away, and he feels like Danny Kerr around the fringes is a threat that keeps that pace high and maybe accentuates that. habit.
Well, Van Portfleet was quick round the
He was, and he was
year.
decisive, and him going blind early on off that.
See what happens when you don't take a step before you pass.
Yeah. That decision raised eyebrows to start Jack Van Portfleet in the first instance, but having seen him a lot at Leicester this season, he's just a very rounded, skillful, assured, decisive scrum half. I think England, but maybe at their, when they've looked clunky, they've not been decisive from the base of rucks, and that maybe that has a knock-on effect from the breakdown being a bit messy and their contact skills being a bit off.
I think Kerr is lively around there. And I don't think there's much in the decision, given when you take into account Kerr's experience. It's just that Van Portfleet, I thought, was exemplary from what he did from start to finish. It's interesting, playing at an oval. It's a strange. It's a strange look. It's a beautiful cricket ground, but it's a cricket ground.
Yeah.
It's not the same. You look at the parameters, and the crowds nearer on some sides or further away on the others. And the other thing is that when you get onto what is a cricket square,
players are about to come out.
It's actually harder.
Coming out the tunnel.
The ground is firmer. It's softer in the outfield, and you start to skate a bit. Yeah. So players have got to be. I don't know what sticks they'll be wearing, but they've got to be quite prescient about that.
What have you made
because the underfoot conditions changes.
What have you made of Australia?
I think they've been
decimated by
underpowered, and I think whilst they've got, you can see a lot of the league converts and the former island-based players. They're very direct.
Yeah.
They're running Karevi and so on. It is powerful, but it's very direct, and a lot of the subtlety has gone out to that. And they're the sort of team. They scrap well usually, Australia, and they stay in games, and they're good when they get chances. But I just think at the moment they have to have everyone there to be able to scrap with the best at the top. Yeah. And when they can't do that, they should be put away by teams who've got a little bit more. Well, I don't think they've not got no attacking threats. I just think the attacking threats are predictable in this sense. It's easy, mind you, it's easy thinking and knowing what's coming and actually stopping it. Because players like Karevi and so on, they are so powerful and they will get you over the line. But if you can limit them to where the chances come, and they're not a long range team and so on, so we'll see. I know people are very bullish. Some of the people in the studio seem to be very bullish about England's chances. I'm not so much. The third test is always a really difficult test to win for all sorts of reasons. Not least because you're thinking about going home and you don't want to, but you've got to see, because you've got to say, right, when am I packing my bags? Who's picking me up at the airport? And in the second and first test, you don't have to even think about that because it's not happening. But it literally is happening, so you can't not do it because you need to arrange to get home and stuff like that. And you have you checked out? And you put these thoughts out of your mind, but the fact you've had to have them means it's different to preparing for the first and second test. So the third tests are difficult. This is an unpredictable ground. I don't like ovals. Mind you, it's sold out, so we'll see. And I've played on that oval, played with the Lions there, and what you can't see.
Provincial game or one of the tests?
No, it's a provincial game. And when the first time I played against Phil Kearns, I thought he's 19 years old. Hook. I thought, right, we'll have this little lad. And I thought, what he got there? God, he's strong actually. He's quite a capable player. And then Kearns was one of the best hookers around, as he proved.
We'll get into your record.
You can see there there's a
long way between the fans, isn't there?
Yeah, but not only that, can you see between the two 25 metres?
There's a square.
There's a square. The ground there is harder than it is elsewhere. And as it gets towards the middle, it's really firm. It's a strange feeling.
They're one of the 2001 Lions tests at the MCG, I think. So it would have been a similar deal.
Yeah.
Speaking of your record against Australia, I think we can get into this at half time, but we're just talking off air. Brian correctly kind of guessed that he played against the Aussies in 10 tests, and he was self-deprecating. He thought he won 3, he won 4. Big shout out to Russ Petty, rpetty80 on Twitter for this research.
You've got to remember when I started playing England with rugby. I mean,
yeah. Can you remember? So you had 2 direct opponents at hooker. One was Phil Kearns, who had 3.
Tommy Lawton.
7 of them. So quiz question before we start. One player for Australia played in all 10 tests.
Poitevin. No. Oh, it was the number 8 that Teague battered. Far Jones? Liner?
No, Liner. All 10.
He
all
won
10
bad.
Brian Moore tests. Yeah,
he won bad Liner.
We're into the anthems then. Did you have anybody? It's been interesting watching sort of the Leicester Tigers Cleat.
I tell you,
Always-
I'm
always-
not going to
did
have
you
the Aussie, Aussie, Aussie chant
Maybe. Well, this is
from the native Australian.
This is where we got it. This is where we got it last time. Did you have any?
You know what? This cultural approach is relatively new. It wasn't there at all. The Aborigines, as they were called, the native Australians, as they were called, when I went there, were roundly derided by a lot of Australians. It was quite racist, actually. They were the legal people who were running around when I said racist, but it's pleasing to see because people talking about settling. These people are what? These are people 40,000 years old. Not personally, obviously, but as a race. No one's quite sure how they got there, actually.
Did you make sure you were next? Did you have anybody that you made sure you were next to during anthems? You see that I was saying the Leicester clique, as they have been called previously, but it's been actually quite nice. They've
People just stood where they wanted it. Though there wasn't a formal. Then it is more formal now. There wasn't. I didn't like to see some people who were tone deaf. You're at Ackford singing the national anthem. You say, oh, for God's sake, just mime, please. Just mime. So you put me off.
I suppose at an oval, you're so far away from the fans that you're probably hearing each other a bit more than you like.
The corners are nearer, sides are miles away. Difficult for kickers, actually.
Yeah.
Because normally you have kicking stands, there. All of a sudden, it's just gone out.
The other quiz question I had with you about your record against Australia, how many of the 10 were in Sydney?
Well, SCG, that horrible place at the one that they built. There was a big furore about it. We played the World Cup. We lost to Wales there. Well, I can't remember what it's called now. I don't know is the answer.
Five.
Yeah.
I guess it's interesting how a Test career works out like that, isn't it? Because
but the thing is,
during
that time, Scotland players of my era would have played New Zealand a lot more than they played Australia. We just kept, for some reason, we didn't tour New Zealand. It just didn't occur. Now, that was a big downfall. I think it was a big, it would have improved our rugby greatly to have to go down there. Probably lost, but we had. I mean, and funnily enough, Australia were probably stronger in terms of world rankings than they are now, relatively. In my time.
Time for prediction?
I'll tell you what, I think England might snatch it. I tell you what, this is a big thing. Last week, England didn't give penalties away.
Yep.
They give stupid penalties away, which they want to do. And it has to be the same tonight. Because it's what undoes them in ill discipline. It's not, and ill discipline doesn't mean, not smacking people or butting them. It means not stepping offside, not leaving your hand on the ball when the referee just said that. Not giving the one away, in your own half. And when England do well, they cut that out because they don't get involved. So we'll see. And referees, in my opinion, don't decide Test matches. It's how you react to a referee that decides Test matches.
Yeah. What has impressed me about Wallabies has been Scott Wisemantle. How he's, as you say, they're just getting those dynamic runners that they've got into the game, and it looks like there's a real flow and an efficiency about their attack.
But we were talking earlier on about the unpredictability in terms of what defences are forced to defend.
Yeah.
And last week, when England were in their purple patch where they started, and you saw them distributing with runners coming at angles from wide out. Now, defenders can't see that. It comes at the last minute, and then they've got to make a decision. Is he going to get the ball? In which case, I have to step and hit. Because if I don't get a full shoulder on him, he's going to go through me. So you have to make a decision. Once you've made that decision, if he gets it and you hit him, fine. If he goes around the back or out the back, then you're fixed. So that's what England, and when England were doing well before the last World Cup, when they were on that roll, you had so many options, in, out, deep ball, and so on, from different players, and so many ball carriers. And to be a good ball carrier, you don't have to be big necessarily. You have to be elusive. You have to get over and around that first tackle, or make yards after the initial contact. And if England start well, that's what they will be doing well.
There have been a lot of hallmarks of Wisemantle's influence, I think, on Australia. They've hit up in the middle, they've zigzagged back to the short side a fair bit, and then they've had those with England. He brought it in with it was often Farrell and Daly sort of arcing around together in those two waves, sort of together, one behind each other, and they've brought that to Saracens, those two. But you've had Noel Alessio at 10 in this.
The forward Farrell thing. So Smith Farrell.
Yeah.
Smith needs to play close to the line at times.
I think Kerr being there will help him.
Yeah.
I think that might be a sort of.
You know, you can work magic,
Spoken
which
about
and
the
he's
referees on
undoubtedly got something special. He needs to do it close to the line
Yeah.
to be effective. If you're doing it way back, people can afford to sit
Yeah.
and wait to see what you do.
See. And we're away.
Often I thought underrated, kickoffs,
Yeah.
restarts, because they are a set piece.
For sure, yeah, for sure. That's a big. Fortunate England just getting away with one there. We wondered how much Danny Kerr would kick. He's gone for his box kick straight away and being charged down. That's Nick Frost.
Well, Van Broekvink last week, the really effective thing about him was his box kicks.
Yeah.
All his kicks were absolutely spot on, and nearly every one of them.
As you'd
and there's
expect,
a big difference.
As you'd expect from someone who's playing under Steve Borthwick, that test match template that Tigers use, I think has served well the guys coming into the England setup.
You know, when you set that up and they're all doing these dogleg things,
Yeah.
why does no one think to stand in front
just in case
of the player who's going to charge you down? Because you're allowed to do that.
You are, yeah. I don't think that's you're right to highlight that. That's just a detail lapse for England, and now they've been lucky. Australia knocking that on, but they've still got to come away from a scrum in their own 22, which is never easy. Potentially a big carry coming up from Vanana. They won a free kick.
A scrum's not completed. Never, really.
Think Ellis Genge has really stepped up?
Genge's scrummaging is one of the aspects that he's come along a long, long way. He was not a great scrummager when he started. He's now turned himself into that, and he'll only get better because he's still young.
Mm.
And Slipper on this side, he's a notorious diver for Australia. Well, we'll see.
Centurion.
Yeah, century of diving.
So this into a bit of kick tennis was pretty predictable.
I know that people get bored of kick tennis, but you've got to stay with it because when you do the analysis, the teams that suddenly think I've had enough of this and make the wrong decision to counter-attack are the ones that get punished. And that's why people...
Well, there you go. That's the discipline you're talking about there, isn't it? So looks like there's a penalty against England for advancing in front of from an offside position during this. And this is where they weren't lapsing early on in the second test, but already that's a little lapse, and you just feel that because of how inefficient they've been.
The other thing is when you're toing and throwing, this advancing in front of the kick, you've got to concentrate. You forget which kick you were on and have a move from there. The best thing is just to stand still.
I was going to say, have a
stand still.
So it's a handy field position for Australia, and their line-out's been a really...
I mean, this is where a Toji will be missed. There's a wrecker in a line-out.
Yeah. Gone off the top. There you go. There's that bounce back to the short side that they love doing. That's a nice tackle from Chisholm. What do you feel that Eddie Jones' relationship with sort of Premiership form? Do you feel like it's kind of stayed consistent? Do you feel like he respects it a little bit now? Does it depend on the side?
I don't think he ever cares.
No.
You know, he's what he produces for him. So what we should be concerned about at the moment is the Australians are making, apart from that, are making ground after the contact.
Mm. Interesting decision coming up. So Australia, do they go to touch here? Ireland got rewards for doing that early on. That's what Australia. They've got a camera on Nick Frost there, who's huge carry through Chesham has ended up winning the.
Well, look, he's made 5 yards there after the initial contact.
Australia, Nick Frost there is in his second test, having come off the bench last week for a debut. There is no specialist lock on the bench for Australia. They're missing Will Skelton, they're missing the Arnold twins in France.
And that's a big,
well, if we're talking about World Cup context, that's him coming back he's been phenomenal for that show, hasn't he? Just that stopping power, again, to use another kind of trend.
We're talking about big units.
Yeah, the biggest unit. So Australia going for poles, lining up, so Alessio to make it 3-0.
Well, look, you had 5 minutes and England have not been in the game, apart from kicking the ball back. Go to another reader's question here. The most frustrating thing within this from Jevon Hood.
the most frustrating thing with England at the minute is watching them butcher so many chances in the opposition 22, including in the final against South Africa and the next game against France in 2020. How can they replicate the efficiency that Australia has shown? And Jeva makes a point that he thinks the centres are key, and Farrell's game,
that's good. It let off
10 at 12 scares nobody. Why haven't England bred, stolen or borrowed a Greenwood or a Roberts?
Well, I've only been writing about this for 20 years because it's only been going on for 20 years. You know, they've been waiting for Tuolangi, and you understand why, because Tuolangi ran over New Zealand against as far back as 2012, and had he been fit for...
That's an error for Farrell. So let's see, I missed the kick, and then from the 22 drop out, Farrell's gone out on the full. So that's, we're talking about those that indiscipline again. That's errors inviting pressure.
Well, it's errors you don't need. You know, it's unforced errors, it's unfamiliar errors, and more of it brings you back. You've just escaped because they've not kicked 3 points, which you should have done, because a relatively easy chance from the 22 and 15 metre line, and now they've got a scrum right in the middle of the field, with both the sides open. Back rows are now wondering which way you go.
Will Stewart sticking in the front row. Will Stewart being a success story this tour, do you think?
He's coped, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's all you could ask. You know, he's for him to do that first up. Not going to be dominant.
He's one of those players for England that's been around a while now. Imagine he'll have 20 odd caps, and that's that bracket that Jones has sort of been vocal about wanting players to kick on from, which is kind of expectant. That's been another big.
Dear, butchered by Australia. That's just not good enough.
That's been another real area of instability.
And it's a great pickup because Ludlam has found himself creeping forward on the scrum to try and get into a position. Oh, that's
a big miss.
Oh dear.
That's Reece Hodge in at fullback, and that movement for Australia in their back three has been crazy.
I think the winger did overrun him slightly as well.
Yeah, that looks like it's down to just that lack of cohesion.
Well, 10 points
7 minutes,
left
7
off
minutes
the board.
gone. 7
10
minutes
points.
gone already.
That's not straight.
England's more real big factor in the game last week, and they've...
Yeah, and they need to do it because they're the good. It destroys people.
Carry from a bit of a polo there.
You're saying, why do you not box kick or kick off from there? Because you want a better angle. We've ended up in the same place.
Yep. That's good. Would you credit Australia's defence for that sort of funneling them back to where they came from? That's a very good kick from Kerr, in fairness. Danny Kerr he was a player that players were taking over from him in the pecking order.
This didn't look good, actually.
His kicking. It's a HIA at the very least.
Sipper.
And they've got Angus Bell on the bench, who started the first two tests. He's a really good carrier, and actually Angus Bell came back on in the second test, so ended up playing a whole heap of minutes. So been a busy boy, very good player, really, really dynamic, muscular carrier.
What do you reckon that is? His shoulder?
He looks in a lot of pain, as you said, doesn't he? Yeah, it's holding that right shoulder. And this is, the three tests, the subplots that kind of bubble under and come to surface during a three-test series.
Yeah.
One of them is just keeping as many key players on the pitch as possible. Well,
that's what he's done. He's hurt his shoulder by driving in and not binding and slotting someone for a cheap shot from behind.
Oh, yeah. Oh, staying on.
Looks like a stinger. I mean, it might be fine, it's a stinger, because sometimes if you hit your neck in a certain place, you get a neurological shock down your spine. And I tell you what, it's frightening. Because when you call it a stinger, that's what it is, like a zap of
I had a couple playing it, a very lowly. It's almost like a fiery feeling, I remember.
Yeah, it hurts.
Not that I was making too many tackles.
That's about 2 yards not straight.
Well, that got England off the hook, didn't it? What we're doing here. So Johnny Hill's been penalised for a tackle off the ball. quite funny that sort of dominating the media agenda this week was a question of niggle. Four avoidable
things.
Yep. And they're stacking up, and we're only 9 minutes in.
I tell you, they're lucky. I mean, they're still 0-0.
Yeah.
This is just brainless.
Johnny Hill was probably pretty.
Actually,
I think it's for not releasing on the floor after this.
Oh, fair enough.
So the initial tackle was fine, but Hill held
down.
Yeah,
I don't think he was
ex-teammates at Exeter, I believe. So.
Oh yes, they are. They were, yeah.
So that's another kind of sideshow that plays into it. Did you enjoy playing in 3 Test series when you had?
Yeah.
Must have been some niggle, but especially playing in the kind of confrontational position.
Well, you want to play in the deciding series. I never understood why people used to play 2 Tests. What's the point?
Yeah.
3 Test series good, and it's a sort of a little pointer to how teams will cope in a World Cup, because if you have 3 consecutive weeks, injuries happen, tactics change, and so on. So they're a better test than.
Oh, it's inside ball. Oh, they've butchered another chance.
Well, dear, oh dear, that's England. They could have been.
England on the ropes here.
England could have been 17 points down by now.
It's that zigzag pattern, and again, it's not.
10 minutes, 17 points. Australia have left off there.
It's nothing hugely.
And in fact, those two chances, they're not half chances. They are certain. They should be certainties.
Yeah. It's not hugely intricate from Australia. It's just quick, and it's just zigzagging either side of the ruck, just making those.
But it's in that. But it's making ground after the contact,
all the time.
because it's turning everyone.
But that's Scott Wisemantle all over, really, and a guy that came into the series on England's side with a bit of pressure.
That is a straight. That is an under 11 pass as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I say a noise a prop, but all props can handle, and he can handle. And he's just given a very poor pass.
Yeah, and Tanya, he set up a try against South Africa with a no-look pass last season. He's a skillful player, but he's let him down there.
Have England had a possession in the Australian half?
I don't think they've had the ball once. They've had that free kick from the scrum, which they booted downfield. Their sole possession has been the box kick that was charged down, and then the little carry that they've won the scrum penalty there, which is handy. For them to still be at 0-0 after 11 minutes
Slipper
is pretty.
claiming
a bonus.
Slipper claiming it wasn't him for the 99,000th time in his career.
I think they've. Well, there you go. Penalty offence either side, and on the referee's side is collared Australia. So a little bit fortunate. Again.
You know why they bind on the arm? Is because it's a very simple thing. I could do this with you. If you bind long there, it's really difficult to twist your man in and get position. You come 6 inches further here, it's really easy. You go there, it's anatomically impossible to stop you. You just twist them round. So that's when they go long and they suddenly come back here. That's why they do it, because it puts them in a much better leverage position, in terms of physics and levers and all that. There's a reason they do it.
Looks like England have kicked away rare possession there. Oh no, it's knocked on. That's another.
The Australians just look sharper at the moment, don't they?
They do. England just look subdued, and it's odd. And the screens just showed a shot of Eddie Jones, who sort of looks a bit at a loss. So that's typical Michael Hooper. You're allowed that. This came up in the. Once he's picked the ball up, and you're not allowed to play the ball, you're not allowed to slap the ball down, but you see Hooper's grabbing his arm, which is fine. So there's a Maori All Blacks versus Ireland game, and TJ Paranara had it done to him, and he was fuming.
Yeah.
But the ref was right. It was Angus Gardner in that case. The ref was right to let it go. Hooper's, I don't know, he's at 120 odd tests now, and just still so full of fight. He was fantastic in the first test in Perth. Started off well here, although.
Oh, it's all relative. He's not a big guy in terms of for international forward now, is he?
Wait, I think that carry that Genge made through him almost accentuated how fierce and tenacious he's been in contact. Because when he's
never happens to him, though, does it?
Exactly. So it's when he is unaware and when his balance is a little bit off, he's going flying. But so often he's the aggressor in those collisions.
Grounded after the tackle again, 4 or 5 metres. makes all the running on easier. That's a forward pass.
4 points. There's a question here from Robin Bardoli on England's attacking shape. We haven't really had a...
We haven't seen it. Oh, if he just stayed on his feet there.
The pitch already looks like it's chopping up a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, because the outfield will be soft.
Yeah. They've had a lot of rain in New South Wales, haven't they? It's got to stand up. So that's pressure relief from England. As we've said a couple of times now, they're fortunate to still be at 0-0, but it's a good interception from Jamie
It's amazing
George.
that they're still 0-0.
Couple of big defensive interventions this series. Jamie George, he got a clean rip off. I think it was Corey Betty in the first test. Had an interesting season, sort of totally out of the England reckoning at the start of the season. Come back in with a few injuries and has stayed first choice with Luke Cowan-Dickie, sort of struggling for fitness. Luke Cowan-Dickie.
Well, he's a very good hooker, very good player.
Regarded as a really strong scrummaging hooker. I think he got a lot of credit.
And he's one of the people that George has been asking to lead things as well.
That could be a penalty for not rolling. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're going to be 3-0 up after 15 minutes.
It's been a rope
cost already, which is how sport goes. I mean, the Australians don't do it.
Oh, here we go.
That's what Smith does well when he's on the ground, when he's close to the ground, close to the gain line.
So that's a frustration. I like they come back for the penalty here. That'll count as a entry to the 22 that has ended up coming up because it's just a little bit.
He just overran him.
But
see, when Smith is close to the line there, then they've got to come to him.
Yeah, it's a good run. So it could this England backline could be kind of accused of being slightly lacking a pace. Tommy Freeman is a real athlete, and that was a pretty slippery.
Can be accused of what? Well, they can be accused of unfamiliarity.
Yeah, that too.
You know, when you've got people who are just playing together for the first or second time, how are you ever going to be, fluent in the way that, people who know each other, think about Sexton, Ringrose, Bundy. How many times have they played together?
That Leinster connection
40,
means they're
50?
Just building on that cohesion sort of all of the time. And England don't have
funny
that
enough,
luxury.
they look cogent.
Yeah.
It's odd, that, isn't it? Yeah.
Nice offload from Freddie Stewart. He's a really interesting guy. I haven't heard, maybe apart from Owen Farrell, I haven't heard Eddie Jones as consistently full of praise for an individual as I have.
I interviewed him on the podcast.
Called him colossal.
I was very impressed by his maturity.
Yeah.
And Freeman's, we'll see where we go with this. We've had Noel and Elliot Daly and Johnny May on the wings, and they've done well at different times. And the new crop now with the other people, Stuart and Freeman and one. The good thing from England is they look to be producing those players who have got a lot of potential. And the more you want competition for places, but you also need decisions for people to get in for their first choice or whatever to get the consistency, get the accuracy that they need.
To go back to Robin Bardoli's question there, I think they've gone wide really quickly there. With as you identified, they have got penalty advantage, so I guess that's kind of a mitigating factor and is going to make them look a bit more ambitious. But they've gone wide quickly with Smith at first receiver playing really flat, and that's something you identified at the start of the game. Freddie Stewart hitting the line there and getting the offload, so going wide.
Well, if you don't hit it flat, everyone can just drift off you.
Yeah.
Unless someone shoots out, then they just see what's going. So when he does his goose step, which is more effective than you'd think because it just checks people, if you do it behind there, the people can afford to adjust.
I think the initial theory was that they wanted him at second receiver deep so that the play would kind of become a bit more fractured and then maybe you'd have more one-on-ones. But I agree with you. I think just the more you watch him, the more he just seems...
They don't do that. Look, when he plays his best rugby at Queen's, they don't do that.
No.
Mind, they do have Esterhazen, which is a big difference.
This is kind of what makes me laugh when people say, why aren't they giving him the tools that he thrives so well with at Quins? And it's because, relatively speaking, you'd have to get a 12 who was dominating the gain line in Test rugby and a front row that is smashing through scrum penalties all the time, which is what he gets at Harlequins quite regularly. You're not going to get that in Test rugby, are you? Just because, or very, very rarely. Maybe a peak.
See the way that we'll just come on to this. See the way the Australians here, where they've contacted into the line there in the last four times they carried. was completely different.
Yeah.
So defenders have to make decisions all the time, and that's why they're making ground. If Australia had done what they're supposed to do, they'd have been 14 points up. They've just been immensely sloppy.
Yeah.
I mean, really uncharacteristically and terrible, actually.
It might end up just to go back to that first England attack, and I know it was an overrun, so it ended. England are 3-0 up now, but it's ended with Tommy Freeman's break into the Australian 22, and then they've come back, zigzagged off that touchline, and Johnny Hill's dropped the pass. I just feel like more can maybe be made of that, and England can maybe be a little bit more composed in those situations, and maybe sort of covet them a bit more, if you know what I mean.
Well, look, we were talking about Ireland earlier on, and their ability to pose questions to defenders. But if not, it doesn't go that way. They're quite happy and capable of doing 12 phases till they get in a position where they can try it again.
Yeah.
So when you get there, you've got to be confident enough to manufacture the situations. And this is what rugby league's about. People forget about it. In rugby league, it's quite often side to side as well as game gone, because they have certain moves from different widths. And it's the same with here. When you open it up, you've got to be able to do the number of phases to get yourself into a position where you start again.
First quarter down already. Goes quickly. There's a big chance here for Australia again. I think get a bit of width into it. It's a very good cover tackle from Marcus Smith.
The other thing about Smith, he's not shy of contact.
He really is.
He's just not big. And if you have an 19 stone man running at you from the start, and you're small, he's probably going to make ground. But he doesn't shirk anything. I
think that was maybe Eddie Jones. It's quite funny. A lot of Eddie Jones' first book's getting cited a lot, but I've no doubt in 2023, after the next World Cup, he'll write another one with a new set of quotes we could go off. But one thing he said about playing Ford and Farrell together was that he worried when they had an imposing centre like someone like Karevi against them. So that's what encouraged him in the quarter-final against Karevi to go with Farrell Tulagi Slade. But I think with Smith it's maybe slightly different, and I think that might be partly to do with some of the tenacity shown in defence for Harlequins has been good. A bit of width here for England.
Lovely hands.
A lot of really nice offloads. So Freeman, see,
whatever happens, you have to keep the ball in play.
So that's two visits to the opposition 22 and 3 points through the penalty they came back for. But that's a familiar story, isn't it?
Jamie George, quick hands.
Jamie George again, Farrell again with the offload.
Ball in the wrong hand.
I feel slightly vindicated because I was asked whether England needed a bit of more pace, and I said Freeman isn't slow, and he's not slow. But it is interesting that...
How is it a winger, though, doesn't know to carry the ball in his outside hand?
That's the experience, I guess. I know it's not necessarily a caveat because he's playing at test level, but he's 21 Freeman.
Just a player, not even a winger.
Yeah.
Isn't it natural you want to have someone to fend off?
Really odd start. I think it just is. At the beginning of the series, just had no idea how to call this, and that's because you've got to, and it's not necessarily bad for the spectacle to have
What good from an England point of view is that Australia have had a purple patch, and it was a good first 10 minutes when they were on top a lot, didn't score, and England now will have, hopefully, will have their 10 minutes. And we'll see where we go offside.
Oh, but that's the third visit to 22, and then another one that they've lost possession from. So really, that's really interesting that they're getting Freddie Stewart into the game from first phase, just from a really simple high ball. It looks fairly primitive, but why wouldn't you? Freddie Stewart is commanding in that area, and they've got on the wing, they've got Freeman.
He does that well, doesn't he, Stewart? He's great in the air.
That's what.
Maybe he's 6'5", so.
Yeah. That's what I like about it. Freddie Stewart, as you say, just a really assured guy to listen to whenever you hear him in conversation. And when you hear him talk about his high ball stuff, you just say, that's my super strength. So I'm going to keep working on it and making sure that it is, making big momentum shifts in games.
There's two aspects of this. He needs to try and demand that he gets in the game more by in attack, but they also need to use him better. No, you've got to put that down. Should score here. Yeah,
it's a nice try.
Good try.
So that's indicative of how clinical Australia have been. That's just the first phase. I mean, it's a one-on-one missed tackle. I think we'd see it. We didn't really see it very well with the first camera angle, but be a one-on-one missed tackle in the 13 channel. It might have been Porter.
Well, England can't complain because that's the third time they've been shredded.
Completely.
See if it's a missed tackle there.
That's in broken field, that situation where England just aren't as clinical as other sides are, and that does hurt them. And it must hurt a side psychologically quite a lot, because although I don't think England can complain with actually going down in this instance.
No, they can't.
But
I mean, complain in the sense that it was a missed tackle from Gorovetti that allowed him to pass and create the overlap. But in terms of how the game's gone, they're lucky to be 7-3 down.
Completely. It's Tom Wright that scored it.
And disappointing because that came from the penalty.
Yeah.
You know, from coming in the side entry when they just made an inroad into the 22.
This is where we are. This is where we are with England and Australia, to be honest. Two flawed, but it's forward sides that are kind of struggling to kind of really get a foothold and work out who they are as teams. That's really nice work from Nick White.
I think Australia will be closer when they get people, Skelton and other people, big power back.
But for
I think they're nearer than we are.
Yeah, but for them to beat England without those guys would be a real step in the right direction for them. I mean, we're just looking at Lacio lining up the conversion. He wasn't meant to be playing a particularly prominent role this series. Quade Cooper pulled out minutes before the start of the first test. It's coming back in. It's 7-3. And England can't really complain, and for a couple of reasons. They weathered the storm, they dug a hole for themselves with a few errors, and then they didn't capitalise on 3 visits to the opposition 22 beyond the penalty that they've got. That's becoming they're going to have to start taking these try-scoring chances, however they do it, whether that's through composure, whether it's through slicker ball movement, like Australia have shown there. It's just a tale as all the time.
Well, on the previous good run before the last World Cup, I remember writing, they had a really good habit of staying in games where they were under the cosh and then coming to win them. At the moment, they've got a habit of not quite getting there.
Yeah.
And certainly when they get in the last quarter, is it 12 out of is it 4 out of the last 12 last quarters they've won?
It's not many.
Something like that.
A lot of lapses that they've struggled with.
That'll be South Africa. Wales would be a hell of a test. I don't think it'll be very pretty.
No, I mean, how well have Wales done?
Fantastic.
Back from that.
Fantastic.
There's so many hardened operators in that side.
Remember the question, can they do it without Alan Wynne-Jones? We don't want to do without him, but, by and large, he's been a peripheral figure.
Yeah, Adam Beard and Will Rowland's really stepping up.
Front row stepped up, scrimmaging. South Africa haven't had the run on them like they have in other tests.
Question here, if we get a lull at any point, James Stovall's asked, which English player or players do you think have the greatest chance of making a World 15 by the next World Cup and beyond? For example, James proposes Ellis Genge started to improve
in a World 15?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
None.
Itoje?
Yeah.
And Itoje? And Itoje?
That's another knock-on from England, just on that
depending on what sort of style you want to play. I think he's probably the one world-class player at the moment.
So Eben Etzebeth, Tyg Byrne was actually phenomenal for Ireland at the end of that game in Wellington just now. England. The lapses were almost starting at the end of both halves for England in this series. They looked out on their feet, I thought, after the first 20 minutes in the first test. And then they obviously had this fantastic first half hour in the second test, and then that's when the doubt looked like it crept in. We're up to 27 minutes now. Australia have just forced a knock on, so they'll put into a scrum on their own 10-metre line. A really interesting little 13-minute period before half time to just see whether England can reassert a little bit of composure. Well, they've lacked composure outside of a 5-minute window. Scrum penalty would be pretty handy here, just to bring
That is right on the square there.
Yeah, right on the edge of it, isn't it? Almost like the
I mean, no,
opposite
look,
flankers are struggling.
you can't obviously see it, even if you can see the picture. But I promise you, the reason they're all doing that with the boots is that the ground is much harder there.
Dave Flatman on commentary for Sky Sports wondering if traction's a bit of an issue. It's looked like that outside of
David, I pointed that
scrums.
out right at the beginning of the game, mate.
He's watching maybe. Australia's spreading it from first phase again.
Oh dear.
And Reece Hodge has made a bit of a half break.
Everything at the moment is reactive, isn't it?
England haven't got going at all, and there's Corabetti gone right through. This can happen with touring. Ooh, Liverpool a bit unlucky there.
Are you sure about that, referee?
Yeah, that's. So when Billy Vunipola is playing well, he's a real defensive threat, a real jackal threat, and Australia made the break there. They came through Corabetti on their right, and they came back into midfield. Another big break, and Billy Vunipola looked like he got over the ball, but he's been penalised for not releasing prior to doing that. Big call, but it's a chance for Australia to go 7-up. Oh, he's unlucky there. There's definitely
nonsense.
A release. Yeah, that's a poor decision.
Absolute nonsense.
Poor decision and a really good bit of play, good bit of defence from Billy Vunipola.
He's not a tackler there. He just put his hand.
Yeah, and he's released.
He went down. He went down under his own steam. That's nonsense.
Those are potentially the toughest area to get right for the refs, aren't they? We saw Lewis Rees-Zammit a 50-51 in the first test against South Africa, and it was whether he'd released or not. The referee argued that he didn't, and then he was sort of yellow carded, and there was a huge turning point. That has given. Yeah, as I say, that's given Australia a chance to go 7-up. But as we've been saying for this first half hour, they deserved it. They've just settled quicker, haven't they? England looks subdued. I think in these third tests can be difficult for touring sides, can't
More
they?
than that, though, as I said this right from the beginning, the making ground in the tackling in and out.
Yep.
Either from missed tackles or from people being asked questions of and making decisions where they're not in the ideal place. And they're doing that much better than England.
Yeah.
England haven't actually carried a lot of balls, so we can't tell.
No. Yeah. And they've got when they.
You see all those like coppers helmets they've got on there. They're giving out
the yellow ones. Yeah.
They're giving out the free.
Well, I remember
when I first went to Australia, one with the Lions, and you went to Ballymore, they had to give song sheets out with the words to the national anthem.
Just because it's such a.
Well, the phenomenon now of Advanced Australia Fair and it being a big, at the time it was seen as we're not really that bothered, and some people didn't even know the words. It was a massive scrap on the hill.
An error. That's a big error from Australia. They've carried the ball back into their own 22, and Hodges smashed it out on the full. So this is a huge chance here for England. And
well, I say a huge chance. It's a chance. It's the first one.
Oh, sorry, no, there's a line out here, sort of 15 metres out. But we're already, as I'm trying to keep a tally in my head.
No, why is that there?
Ruck outside it's where they kicked it from, so that's where they brought it back.
Oh yes, sorry.
So
right, this is them driving more. This is what England should be doing, and not better.
That's really poor.
Sorry for the swearing.
Now Billy Vunipola's won a jackal penalty back. He's a bit of irony there because he probably should have got the first one, but that's another gaffe from England. So that count as 4 visits to the 22 and still those 3 points, which is pretty poor. Yeah.
See, that is the first chance they had to have a proper driving maul. It went really well last week.
Yeah.
And you got a penalty because somebody's stupid, but from Australia. But But that needs to be more clinical. First time.
So Farrell lining up a kick to reduce their England's deficit to 10-6. Question from D-Rev. I'd welcome yours and Brian's thoughts, please, on Joe Marchant being the latest three quarters to go from hero to zero in a couple of weeks as a selection of Will Joseph. Inspired, has Marchant done that much wrong, or is Eddie and the coaches merely looking for big tough boys who are prepared to run over the opposition? It's interesting, wasn't it, Marchant? You'd imagine.
I thought Marchant had played reasonably well, actually.
Yeah,
he stepped up. Marchant is one of these players, and sometimes you get this. You get players who, at club level, they're quite good, have you? And you think, but he's not a superstar. And then they play internationally, and they think, oh, he's quite good. And they never actually dominate games, but he just does things right. And Marchant one of these guys who to me, he's a quality player because he can do the right things at different levels, at higher levels. And I'm surprised because I can't see he's done that much wrong. But depending on which one you want, would he be better defending wise? Because at the moment, the Australian centres are creating a lot of problems.
I think if that persists, that'll be the question about the keeping Smith and Farrell together. Farrell kicked that for 10-6, so England being within 4.
Why are they being allowed to carry on making ground when they're offside? And that has actually got in the way of Kerr.
Kerr kicking long from base of rucks rather than to compete, which is interesting because that's with Van Portfleet on last week. They were kicking to compete a lot.
Can someone tackle someone?
I think interesting will be when Van Portfleet comes on, because having come on sort of for a cameo in the first test and scored a try, and then being so assured from the start in the second test, I think he'll get along. I would imagine he'll get half an hour.
The big difference as well, though, between what Kerr's having to do now is they were on the front foot for a long time.
Yeah, of course.
Not that he didn't play well, which he did.
Australia's line out going all right, considering that they're down to 2 locks and they're 2 locks without that balance with the Ota at 6, who's on the bench covering lock, it looks like.
Step.
Nearly there. That, as you say, so offload gone astray between Stewart and England are pushing a lot of offloads, sort of more than I can remember for a little while. And
they're pushing it because they haven't had much ball. And they're thinking, I've got a chance here. He has to go. Had they had more ball, that's the one they would have said, is he actually on? Maybe not. Although I did think he was close enough.
Yeah.
Pass was okay.
I wonder whether this sort of thing plays in. So Stewart went really close last week with a chance to seal it, and Porter was on his shoulder, and the offload didn't come because Stewart backed himself to get over the line and he set up possession, didn't hinder England in the end. But I wonder whether that plays in your mind, and then when you hear a call from Porter, you're more likely to push it. I don't know. Oh, is this Danny Kerr coming off? Well, there you go. Van Portfleet on after 36 minutes. That's very interesting. Doesn't look like it's forced by injury. I always thought that might be in the offing. And you feel for Kerr a bit there because it's been.
Was it a rough ride, really?
Yeah. And it's going to be. You'd think, looking forward to 2023, it'd be an either or between Kerr and Youngs, wouldn't you? As far as one scrum half being in the.
Had he got his selection policies right in longer term, like they have done with Dupont and 5 other French scrum halves, you wouldn't have either of those in because they've done very well, and thank you for all you've done, brilliant, but these are the guys. But should be in that position.
But with guys who've got fewer than 5 caps. Well, Randall's. How many's Randall got? Randall won't have 10. Yeah.
Quirk 2, 3.
Quirk
4,
2,
5.
3. Yeah. Yeah. So what you'd imagine one of them.
If you were an Aussie now, you'd be seething, wouldn't you? You're probably going to go in 1 point up, having dominated the half, absolutely dominated the half.
That's been the sort of tale of the games under Jones against Australia, is absorbing a hell of a lot of pressure, defending pretty well, kicking a lot, and sticking in games and then squeezing when the time's right. It's been a bit different today because Australia have blown chances. England have not been clinical themselves. It's been a bit of a weird game. England are kicking here. Farrell's got the tee out and they're kicking for potentially to get within 10-9, which 2 minutes to half time they'd take that, wouldn't they? Given how sloppy they'd been. That's that. As you identified at the start, that practice of just kind of inviting pressure on yourself by compounding errors and errors after errors.
Yeah.
Probably hasn't been so much that as just errors that have been avoidable.
With Australia?
With England, sorry.
England.
Well, with both sides.
England's first up defence has been lacking.
Yeah.
You know, too many players from Australia have missed it. Has he?
Kiss. I see it post.
He's got up again. I'm going to see if he's tackled.
So this is an interesting decision here. So England have won a breakdown penalty 5 metres in from the.
You know, remember about 2-3 years ago, we did this all the time. They were tackled, and because they were saying you've got to release them immediately, they were releasing them, and they were getting up again or rolling another 3.
So
Same there.
I'm fairly sure it was Paul. So Paul Williams, there was a directive came out, wasn't there? So it had to be one positive movement from the carrier on the floor, and Paul Williams was refereeing a game in Super Rugby, and there were a lot. I remember writing an article on it. There were about
interesting
30
to go to the
penalties.
corner there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, driving more, please.
Yeah, you're driving.
Like last week, didn't have to be a shift drive, but.
So it's a good kick from Farrell to put it 5 metres out, and that's often talked up as quite an important thing, isn't it? Whether you're going.
What if they go in points up? I can't.
Yeah, remarkable.
Well, that's the start.
Set well here, and they're coming around.
No, you see, that's where you need to set that before you start going, because it gets fractured otherwise, and that's what's happened. They think with driving moles are there, you're going to get going forward quickly. That's not what you do first. You set it first, so you seal it off. It doesn't matter if you go backwards to start with.
Well, that's exactly what England.
They came out there and they're fractured, so he's going to get it.
Oh wow! England really are struggling to get the ball over the line.
How is he onside?
He's not. That should be another penalty advantage. Jeez, this inability to convert short-range chances is. Oh, there's Laws. No, that's offside too. Yeah, penalty advantage.
Someone's got to go to the bin there, you know. That's 2 right on the line. He's got it.
I mean, they're over. They're over. They have.
You've got to feel sorry for the Aussies, haven't you?
It's remarkable how much they've laboured there from short range. They've sort of went through every area of trying to make that last 5 metres. They went maul, pick and go, went
and then
wide
he's good at
Farrell.
that, isn't he?
It's a great tackle. Is that right on Freeman first, and then it's a Leicester connection on the short side. Van Portfleet spinning, and Stewart going over. Powerful guy as well from that. He scores a lot of tries actually for Tigers and for England. That'll be. He scored against France, didn't he? He scored a really good try from longer range, obviously, against Australia. Powerful guy, and actually that makes a little bit more sense when you put him out to the wing, as England have done.
You can hear a few strains of Swindler Sweet Charity in the background. Please stop seeing that. It's culturally inappropriate. Now, it is now, no matter where it started. And I was there. It didn't start in 87, because of Chris Ottey. It's a long thing with inappropriate actions, and the world moves on. So stop singing it. It's boring as well.
Sounds like it was decent travelling support. Lot of players with a lot of family.
You've got to remember there'll be a lot of English people out there working
expats,
or bits and pieces, so it'll be a fair few.
Farrell's missed that second one, but
Oh dear.
so England leading 11-10 at half time is
Well, look, you just go in and say,
something.
thank God. Now, let's have a proper half and let's win the game.
And you'd think that England will get momentum because they haven't really.
Look, that's
had
crushing
that
for
yet.
Australia. Absolutely crushing. Just before half time, they were leading, they decisively. They know they should have been out of sight by now. They should have won the game by now. And now they're going down and they're thinking. And England, I don't think, will have a half where they miss as many tackles first up. So it's not going to be easy for Australia. And pressure's all on them because they've had their patch. Or they've had the first of their patches.
Yeah.
And games are like this, usually against good teams, whether are reasonably evenly matched. Because if they weren't evenly matched, and if you dominate for 80 minutes, they're not evenly matched. You have your 10 minutes or 15, then they have theirs, and you just see who comes on top. And it also depends on, do you have yours just before half time, psychologically, and just at the end, which is really important. And it's simple as that. And Australia have had their bit, and England had a smaller piece, and they've gone in front. It's
almost determined by how much you capitalise on that period
No,
of where
completely.
momentum is with you.
Yeah.
And England have not, in this series and actually in this year as a whole, and this is a habit that's carried on from the Six Nations, when they have been on top of sides, they haven't scored in 5s and 7s. They've scored in 3s when they have scored. Sometimes they haven't scored at all, and that must be debilitating. But eventually they got the ball over line, but you can almost feel it.
If and it is an if, I'm not saying England do go on to win this. The people say, "Oh, they were lucky." Australia. It's not their fault. You ride that. It's Australia's fault.
So positives for England at half time.
Well, they're in the lead, and that is when all's said and done, that is what counts.
In individuals, I think Freeman's been dangerous on that side, notwithstanding him having the ball in the wrong hand maybe for that early break. He's just looked dangerous, looked like a...
Stewart's made one or two nice breaks and so on. Looked safe under the high ball and scored a try.
Yeah.
Up front, not many. Ludlam's ummed and ahed a bit.
Couple of big moments. One rewarded, one actually punished from a bit of impola in defence. But he was the one that won that. That came to nothing actually. I think that second penalty. But Laws won another jackal turnover for Farrell's initial chance.
Look, when you're talking about tail of the half, England have been behind in most positions and cumulatively.
Yep.
It's just that they're in the lead on the scoreboard. They've been outplayed for quite a bit of that half, individually and collectively.
So we're fast forwarding then to this afternoon. You've got two more deciders: Wales in South Africa, Scotland in Argentina.
Well, Scotland should do it now. I mean, they really should. Argentina have shown what they've got, and I think Scotland worked things out, and I think they should carry on. Wales, South Africa, be a big battle because the box will just go at them, and they need to be physically there. They've shown in the past though. They've got a resilience and some durability, but it's going to be hard because the South Africans will really smash at them.
Well,
So we'll see.
They've brought back a lot of the kind of frontliners, haven't they, South Africa, having changed it all up for the second test and almost done the job with that second string, and that's a huge boost in itself. But they didn't. Josh Allen scored at the end, and Wales have taken it to the side. I think it's just whatever Wales had, and they've been through, clearly had a tough Six Nations. But if you remember the France game in Cardiff, they stuck in that game and they nearly beat the side that ended up, winning the Grand Slam. So they've got that nous and they've got that grit still. That's certainly come through the transition between Gatland and Pivac, and that's something to hang your hat on, I think. So wow,
time for a comfort break, as they say. Comfort. I'll be back in 5. If I can find a bar, I'll be back at full time, but I can't. Of straight up to lead in the first. Can you see Australia? Oh God, straight away.
What was the question?
No,
GB?
I don't know.
England had conceded a penalty straight from the restart, which is reason for Brian's reaction.
Well, it's a deja vu. Let's hope it's the same from an England point of view all the way through, and they end up being behind and then winning. Look, Australia, I don't think they can create any more chances than they did in the first half.
No.
In fact, if England do better, that's a dull penalty, isn't it? If you're going to do that and go around the wrong side, you've got to do it first and with no one touching the other side.
So whether or not this England come through here, that the early replacement of Danny Kerr is going to be a really big talking point. It's Jones being really proactive and following on Russ Petty's.
Tell you what, this is a really strange move from Australia, because even if you got that ball in space,
that's a hard
it's
tackle
flat.
from Genge. Is it going to be a yard? No, got away with it. No card. Yeah, so Kerr's replacement, really proactive move from Jones. His replacements of Burrell and Harrison on the 2016 tour ended up pretty well. England winning those two tests against Australia. He also replaced Nick Ezekwe for Brad Shields in, I think, the first test in South Africa 2018, 2 years later. So Jones have been quite.
From a kick-off, England have given 2 penalties away, and they've now got a line-out against them outside the 22 from their own kick-off.
Okay, and there's that bounce. The bouncing back is a really consistent kind of trait of Australia's attack, is going into midfield and bouncing back the other way. And that's consistently throughout the series. That's made momentum.
See, 4, 5, 6, 7 yards made. Oh, he's much made. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yards made. I'd like to see if that clean out was from the right side. I don't think it was.
Might come back to it if Australia score here.
Hit him!
It's frantic. It's, as we've said all along, two kind of flawed sides, and that's made it really frantic in this sort of area when they know that getting points from attacks is going to be so important. England sort of holding firm enough, but Australia's errors.
There's no clear out. He's miles off. He's miles away from the ball.
Who was that Billy Vunipola over the ball again?
No, it's the guy who's clearing out behind. It's the second time he did that. I don't know why he's looking. He's simple twat. He's nowhere near the ruck. You're not allowed to hit him and then run him back 5 yards, you mute.
Great. So it's on the clear out in question from Harry Wilson is on Billy Vunipola, and that is it's a compliment to how much of a threat he is over the ball.
We wasn't anywhere near the ball.
No, well,
that's the point of the penalty. He wasn't anywhere near. We shouldn't have been playing him. See, look again, that one from Van Piotrflip, right on this money, right on the money.
This is the difficulty, isn't it? Because England have prioritised, sort of explicitly said that the performance is more important than the result here. But at the minute, they're winning with a performance that's been largely ragged.
There's a lot of nonsense talked about this. If you win,
Stewart taking a high ball from Van Piotrflip. Stewart has, as we said, amidst and a strong run from Jamie George off the back of it. I'd say those two have been among England's best players.
He's dropped. You got to drop him in there.
few questions coming in that aren't necessarily questions. Nicholas Pittman, England first up tackling physicality non-existent. JVP should have started. EJ selection is poor and attack is non-existent.
First two completely right. Second two, not necessarily so.
England lucky to be ahead. I think that's fair. Yeah, the attacks had...
No.
The attacks had bright moments. That it would be nice to see a kind of wide angle.
I tell you, at least, I don't think it was the right decision to kick, but at least he's put it on the money.
Yeah. They've done that. They've done that continually over this series. Target Lalacio in the backfield. That
could have gone.
Could have gone maybe. Yeah. Who's that in second receiver? So Farrell's, as you would have seen a fair few times for England, Farrell's grub it across the 22 with England sort of
You're in a weird flat
around.
Then, he's a long way behind.
Mm. But it's given Australia a line out on
This
their
is where
own
they
5,
missed
which is difficult, and they've
because
done
can
well, yeah.
be the one who can wreck those.
I think Chesham will be eventually, but it's I wrote in the week that Chesham can't, trying to mimic the impact that Itoje has on a side.
No, Itoje's got many more years' experience in caps, hasn't he? And he's probably a better athlete anyway. I mean, in a lot of ways, when he's jumping solo, he's a freak because he's not lifted, and yet he manages to get up high enough to win ball, which is astonishing, really. It's a lot of it's to do with timing and anticipation.
England's use of their bench from here really interesting. Luke Cowan-Dickie, who just seems
Cowan-Dickie's, almost like for George.
Yeah.
Like him fine. That's not a good start, though, is it? Jesus.
They've also got Jack Willis on a bench to come on in the back row, and Nick Ezekwe. Australia have missed chances. England have scrambled well, and they've recovered when they've lost momentum. Okay, and that, as I say, that's partly due to
apart from the three
handling.
Perfect scoring chances they conceded.
Yeah.
Apart from that, yeah. No, they have done, but then they shouldn't be in that position because that means your first up defence has gone wrong.
Wow. So that's another.
That was through Karevi as well.
Social media friendly carry from Ellis Genge. It was Michael Hooper that he put down in the second test, and he's just disposed of Sami Karevi with.
That's a head.
That's
a head shot. He's got him round the neck there.
So that's interesting. That movement there, Farrell at first receiver, Smith at second receiver, that was what brought the try for Freddie Stewart against Australia in November, and that's a dumb penalty from Hooper, who's taken out Van Portfleet. So that's encouraging from England. That's what happened.
I don't know why the Australian crowd are booing.
England don't need an injury to Jack Van Portfleet. Yeah, there you go. Karevi's gone high on Ellis Genge and he's gone flying. That's a really, really powerful carry. So some of that, in flashes, that's the sort of attack that England want to put together. You've got Billy Vunipola handling, you've got those two distributors dovetailing, and you've got, I think Tommy Freeman's made a really big impact. Friend Joe Church texted me at half time saying there's a bit of Ben Cohen about very probably premature in his second test, but he's a rangy but very powerful runner at the same time. Freeman, he's coming off the back of, as I say, a fantastic year for Saints.
He knows what he's doing over there as well.
Hooper knows what he's doing on a rugby pitch a lot of the time. So he conceded the penalty there for taking out Van Portfleet a long way away from the ruck. So pretty cynical. But you feel with England the way that Australia have, apart from tonight, been fairly clinical up till now. They're going to have to get more than 7 points ahead. This kick for Farrell is to go 4 points ahead, and he slotted it, so it's 14-10 now. Also on the bench, another to kind of go back.
Last week there was the first time all Northern Hemisphere sides won. What are the chances?
They do it again.
No, of them all winning this series.
Yeah.
Because that's what it would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
If they all won, if if they all win again, that'll be all the series done.
I wouldn't.
Which is never, ever, I don't think it'll ever be done again, actually.
No,
Never.
no.
There's a long way to go yet.
Long way
Not
to
least
go.
on this one.
No.
See, that's much better. England now making ground, after contact.
So that's what we spoke about. It's almost as if England was so subdued in that first half that it couldn't continue that way.
Sorry, it nearly happened in this half, didn't it?
Yeah.
He gave 2 penalties away, which put them on the back foot. First half, penalties and errors puts them on the back foot. It's very difficult to get momentum when you're giving penalties away and being marched back from kicks and doing that sort of stuff.
Potentially big moment. Luke Cowan-Dickey with a jackal turnover on the floor. Wasn't convinced he was legal, but England have moved the ball out of transition really well now, giving it to Freeman, and that's a clever kick downfield. And it's Australia under pressure again. And it's interesting, Eddie Jones talking about moving away and expanding their game from kick pressure, because they're good at that template, aren't they? And we saw that in the Ireland game when they went down to 14 men. What? Is Luke Cowan-Dickey legal there?
He was, because he didn't get caught.
Yeah. But I think with however much we talk about referees looking really carefully at the breakdown, it's almost as if you don't buy a ticket, you don't win the lottery. So sides like Wales, sides like South Africa, sides like France, they just keep going hard there, don't they? And actually France...
The other thing is, they don't do it in ones. If you do it in threes and fours, very difficult to pick someone out, so...
Australia's more getting a bit of a move on there, but that's good work. That Genjin there, yeah. Done well there, England. Jeez, Australia have been wasteful too, It's too... This is comfortably the least clinical they've been in attack. I think in the second test they only got into England's 22 5 times and were clinical enough to keep it.
Not bad, not a good pass to him, was it, round the knees?
Jack Noel's if there's probably unfair to say he's improved there, because he's an experienced operator now, but he's marked Corabetti really well this season.
Yeah, I mean, one of the difficulties with England's they're quite happy to be narrow and shoot up and leave the outside for people to fan round behind them.
Yeah.
And they'll concede 20 odd yards, but their point is they'll get it, they'll make the tackle.
So bend don't break sort of thing.
But it gives you nightmares. He's off his feet.
So I think we'll see a change straight away for Van Poortvliet as far as kicking to contest rather than kicking long, as Danny Kerr was doing.
On the money again, look. I know he hasn't put him down,
but look where that next ruck is.
Exactly.
No, not quite.
Oh, hit him!
So that kicking exchange is to me exactly where England are when they play well, is a good contestable kick, putting pressure on the exit, and then now they're able to play off the back of this, and Ollie Chesham's opened his legs through the middle after a nice pass, but they've conceded the penalty. Probably fair, probably...
Yeah, come on.
See that there? So it's White that gets his head the
Knee
wrong
down.
side, but a fantastic...
That's a tackle. You've got to understand that.
Yeah. It had support there too. Just slightly little lack of composure there from Ollie Chesham, but that's what he brings, is that he's really quick, and that's a fantastic line off Smith at second receiver as well. Dave Parecki holding down Marcus Smith is you'd expect from an arm forward against a ball player like Smith.
Knock on. He's gone! He's gone! Yo, 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 yo!
They might. Do you think they'll go back for the England knock-on at the line-out?
Might do.
Potentially. But that meant a lot to him, Smith. He's had a tough...
I tell you, that's quick off the mark, isn't it? Because he was...
Quick off the mark and to stretch away from that cover defence. Not checking it.
I don't think he's a knock-on.
Definitely knock on it off the back from Australia. I wondered whether whoever got up to compete for England looked like maybe it might have knocked on, but doesn't look like they're
No, it's
checking
not a
it.
knock on.
Little pirouette from Smith to take it in front of Karevi's clever, and that's quick. He's a quick guy. Corey Betty chasing it down isn't slow. It was what pace gets you in the back line, and we saw that from Wales in the first test in South Africa. Louis Rees-Zammit had two. One was a chance, one was half a chance from a situation very similar to that. An overthrown lineup.
Rees-Zammit, isn't he?
Yeah, but it's 12, 14 points.
Bang, yeah.
And that's where England haven't been able to stretch away from size. They'll have an 11-point lead after this kick, you'd imagine, from Farrell.
Now this is a position, and if Farrell has to just keep, how many points has Farrell left off? 55? Or is it 4 to?
Yeah, 5. No, you're right. One
Five,
penalty
five.
miss, one conversion miss. You'd back him here.
When you put 5 on this, that's 2 scores, two converted scores. So that's important.
Big moment. I think this whole tour has been sort of, and this whole year really has been played out under the kind of, and England's attack has been under the microscope for it. But when they're playing well as a side, they score tries from defensive pressure too. I think England, maybe people forget that 2016 up to 2019 in their best periods.
I still don't think that they're anywhere near the threat of Sea Island.
Oh no,
At the moment.
no. But I think they play in different ways. I think so. France, South Africa will play with very little possession, and they will force points through their defence.
And don't underestimate this. Winning Australia is not easy. I know they did it 3-0 last time.
Yeah.
But it's not easy.
No.
And Australia got players missing. England have got about 11 players missing.
So Van Portfleet's just put up a high ball, and Reece Hodge comes to take it really well, but he's been flattened by Billy Vunipola, who's having a very big game. In England, famous, commentators curse and all that, but they do look a little bit more comfortable than they have done for a while. Oh yeah, there you go. As I was just talking about
tackle. Good tackle going back.
That's Cowan Dickey.
Oh,
so there you go. They've recovered from a half break, England, and they've forced a turnover. And that's Anthony Seibold was under a little bit of pressure, like Martin Gleeson was, just as far as England looked a little bit fragile, didn't they? Well, certainly over the first test.
They've been much better this half, first up tackling. There's the first time I can remember there being, on almost clean break. It was a good recovery tackle by Cowan Dickey. But in the first 15 minutes, they shredded us twice.
Yeah. Van Portfleet's looked assured. As I say, that's going to be a big talking point after the game.
All his box kicks have been spot on.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
All of them.
It looked like they were kicking for distance with care, and whether that certainly looked deliberate to me, and they've looked like they've just gone back to pulling that back, putting a bit more height on it, and just giving that chase the chance to disrupt. But
if you're going to kick for distance, you've got to kick behind him.
Yeah. Oh, that's a strong scrum from Australia, and they're going to get a penalty chance.
They're going to get a penalty against him. I knew that straight away. That's what happens when you can't hook the ball to number 8 and he get it out. See, he's got stuck there.
Mako Vunipola's on as well for Genge. Joe Hay's been impressive this tour, and that's a big decision from Australia. Penalty right in front of the post to go 21-13 behind.
Well, they're 11 points down, aren't they? Maybe
11 points down. The Moore's been working okay. Makes sense. Flashed up that stat there. 7 visits to the 22 for England, 5 for Australia. England have been more clinical. Australia now bringing on Tate McDermott, who's really sparky scrum half. It might have been. I'm not entirely sure why he hasn't featured earlier on in this series. Jake Gordon was on the bench and Nick White's coming off. That's his series done. He's been... Eddie Jones said he was the niggliest player around, I think, this week, and that's pretty fair.
That's not coming from the right side. That noise, that!
That's a really big stop from England.
It's a huge stop.
There's Chesham there, Chesham and Hill. Hill, England...
You know this. What do you think about everyone running in and whooping?
Don't mind it. Don't mind it. No, I can imagine it would infuriate. It infuriate you if you're playing. But I think it's a very Saracens thing, isn't it? With celebrating little moments. Well, they're big moments, really, aren't they? But celebrating little wins.
The coaches tell them to do it.
Yeah. James Lowe, the Ireland wing's a big offender, isn't he? Loves a bum slap after a scrum penalty. Who I didn't see who ran in then. I think Smith was right in the mix. Johnny Hill, after that, he seemed distracted in that first test, whether he was deliberately told to wind up Darcy Swain. He had good moments, but largely seemed distracted. I think he's been, since then, the second test and then in this test, been really good. And England trying to milk a scrum penalty here. Not going to get one. So into the final quarter. This is a big test for England, because, as you've said, good sides don't let opponents have a sniff from here. And I think a few of their shortcomings, which have been evident tonight even, will be...
I thought Australia should have kicked that last one. He would have brought it down within one score.
Well, that's what we talk about with England, isn't it? In those sort of situations, when you're mauling five, where the kick wasn't a great one either, so it was sort of 10
it's simplistic, but it's like this. If you make that decision, you've got to score.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. Because if you don't, the psychological effect, as we were talking about with England's wastefulness earlier, they seem to be getting bogged down by those chances that were going begging. England have scored. Well, they finally got over the line for Stewart's try in the first half, and then Smith's was opportunistic. But going 5-7 is a big deal. And then stops like Hill and Chesham affected their really big momentum changes as well.
Last quarter.
I think a lot of, we could talk about it at the end, and I think this discussion will probably be coloured by what happens in the next 20 minutes, but England's chopping and changing ahead of the autumn is really fascinating now, and I think to some degree some of the questions remain, to be honest. Here we go, it's having to soak up pressure again, because Valentini's had a good series. Just punched so many holes. Ooh, so unfortunately, so England soaking up pressure here. It looked like Farrell had disrupted a ruck with a bit of counter-rucking on the floor, and Ludlam was in after him.
Ludlam's rolled him, and he's still on his back. He's off his feet. No, it wasn't Ludlam. Was it Lord?
His penalties for not rolling away. Ooh. So as Jones predicted. It's Australia in the corner again, and as you said all game, Brian, this is where Maratoji is probably good for a steal either in the air or when the maul's come down. Having said that, Hill made the first stop, didn't he? Hayes on as well at tight head, interestingly.
Spin it. They're going to be short on the left-hand side here.
big moment coming up with Australia. Just five
I knew he was
metres
going to do me
out.
there. I absolutely knew the scrum half was going to do me there. You can't break people 8 yards beyond the ball, referee.
Breakdown is a total mess. And England have conceded another penalty. It's Hill's the one that's been pinged.
Did he give it a penalty? No.
It's the advantage. It's a huge tackle from Van Portfleet on Karevi on the arc.
He should still have his arm out, yeah.
That is
Good tackle.
that's Stewart on Samu pressing him out. That's what you came to expect from England on the 2016 tour. Not conceding tries there and absorbing so much pressure, and they've done well there. And Australia might eventually break the dam, but so we're just seeing pictures of Stewart getting back to tackle Pete Samu on the Australia's left, and it really is a pretty special one-on-one tackle.
What was he given that for? Side?
I think it was 5. I think maybe that counter-rucks from the side from Hill. But what you don't want to do now, so just seeing the graphic, England have conceded the last 3 penalties. You don't want to concede a yellow here. You don't want to let Australia within
They've had a warning.
either 6 or 4
They've had a
and
warning.
then go down. So they have. This is the time in the second test where England did finally look assured after kind of dipping, but it's Australia coming back pretty strongly here. And they've got
That's not straight.
in the set this morning.
Oh,
I think it's another advantage. Is that somebody to the bin?
someone in the wrong side.
This is interesting. So it's
Someone's gonna go to the
2,
bin here.
might be Chesham.
That's a not that you can't do that. The number of people who have been allowed to ruck well beyond the ball.
So Falau Fang has scored, and it's interesting here whether Paul Williams gives a yellow 2.
No, he won't. They scored.
Don't think he is. You said England for England to feel safe and for them to you're never quite certain with them, are you? That's what Australia have got. They've got a lot of those powerful guys with a low centre of gravity. Sorry, Tupu, Fainga, who's just scored that one. Alalatoa, Karevi, a bit different, but out there at centre, it's got that same punch.
They've got a lot of players like that, but it is very one-dimensional. There's nothing wrong with this. I said before, it's easy knowing something's coming. It's more difficult stopping it.
Yep.
But if you can, that's what's going to be. Bang, bang, bang. Still a try, still more than a penalty, which is a big thing.
And this is where the territorial exchange has just become so important, right?
Yeah.
Because
Well, England just need to force one more
yeah.
to get a penalty and kick a penalty, then it becomes 7 points, so it becomes a converted try.
And you want to know it's his third cap, but you want someone like Jack Van Portfleet.
Do you know what penalty count is this half? Because it feels to me as if England are giving a lot more away than Australia.
Well, England had conceded the last 3 before that try, and they conceded a few at the beginning of the half as well, didn't they? Double change for England. Jack Willis on.
Yep.
For Ludlam and Nick Ezekwe on.
No. They need to keep the ball for a while because they're under pressure, and they wonder why they kick it back. And what they don't seem to understand, if you kick the ball back to the opponents and they field it, that's a turnover. All right, it's a turnover you've engineered and it's down there, but you've still given the ball away. So you do that successively, and then why haven't we got any momentum? Because you've not had any ball. You need, halfway line, they've got enough to be able to go through phases and just keep them in it. Because if they do that, the other thing is, you're the other side that's going to give penalties away because you're defending, and everything goes against you when you defend. And if you don't ask the questions of the opposition with the ball in hand, they're not putting the pressure.
So James Slipper back on. Looks like Angus Bell struggling. That's a blow for Australia because Bell's carrying is fantastic. Jack Willis was meant to be on a 6-2 bench last week. Rib injury kept him out. Obviously, we know his kind of super strength, as we were talking about with Freddie Stewart, is that Jacqueline, and Ezekiel who's just had that first line out called to him. But Jack Willis's carrying is also underrated, and he's just beaten a couple of players there. They're going to the boot.
See, that's two mucks before, 2 breakdowns before a boot. He's a good kick, having said that, but you still turned it over. Having just been under a period of severe pressure for 10 minutes.
And
forward.
wonder how close Samu is to starting, whether we'll see that more in the Rugby
Maybe.
Championship for Australia. It's just so explosive. It's a very good kick from Karevi. We've seen more and more of his kicking game, Karevi, this series.
But look, Charlie, we've not had the ball. England have not had the ball.
Yeah.
They're under pressure. They get 2 successive ones and they kick it.
Yeah.
If they have to kick it eventually, you could have had, Exeter wouldn't do it. This is 8 or 9. And of course, that just settle it in amongst that, you might get a penalty. If you do that twice after 2, this is what happens.
I mean, they're trying to confine Australia to their own 22, aren't they? But it's just hasn't happened. Hill now struggling. This is a big loss because he's been. If you're having to bring Chesham back on into that second row with Ezekiel, that looks a bit light. So 10 minutes left now. It's winning this series, Brian, as far as England's the journey to 2023 that we keep hearing about. Really big boost.
Oh yes. See, away series wins down in the Southern Hemisphere are a big boost. It's not easy to do. Good sides have not done it either. The point I made, and that's still right, is where we go on the 3 problem areas.
Yeah,
he's still there, isn't it?
Not much clearer. Yeah, I don't think that was a really good interview Sky Sports that Laws gave, and he, short of saying, "I am never playing lock again," he pretty much confirmed that he won't be there. Arundel on for Freeman. That's a really big call. And that they want just that little bit of pace in broken field.
That's totally not straight from England.
Jeez, lucky there.
By about 2 yards.
So we're going to maul in the way out of danger a little bit. They'll really fancy milking a penalty here. They're not going to do that. So they're going to go to the boot, I think, through Van Portfleet eventually.
Keep driving. Yeah, it's a super kick again from him.
Yeah, I remember interviewing Van Portfleet earlier in his career, and he very early on in his Leicester career, he got charged down. Might have been away at Sale. I might be getting that wrong, but Sale scored a try, and that's just a real demoralising moment very early on in the guy's career. And he's come back from, and people that work with him talk about not only how skillful he is, but how sort of on the right side of cocky he is with that, and as you'd expect from a successful professional scrum half. But to translate that into the test level is very impressive. But England are under pressure again. think they're going to have to score more points in this game. I think that.
Good tackling. That's not a proper shot on the foot. He's not on his feet.
Oh, big moment. So Zekwe's come on and he's made a couple of really big tackles in defence. He looks really imposing as he pushes out of the line. He's just made another one there as Australia have got a little bit stuck. It's on Valentini, who's a keynote carrier for them. As Zekwe's made the tackle, Courtney Laws has got back up and he's
good jackling that.
Good jackling again, and that's a theme from the second test, isn't it?
Yeah.
Carrying over, Laws coming up, turning up at a really big point. Laws was involved in the initial tackle, so that's fantastic work rate. England are knitting bits together. It's been a bitty performance, this, but at times
it's been a very fractured second half from England.
It's been a fractured game, very weird.
They've got very little. They now need to cope with the last 8 minutes by keeping the ball, by and large.
I think England used all their replacements apart from one, which is Will Joseph on the bench. He was very, very late. And now Valentini coming off for Australia. So their two locks have gone the distance, which... We don't need a spider cam there. England can't really get a foothold here. So
discipline.
Line-out's gone astray. So I think for the 7.5 minutes here, they're going to have to defend for a fair bit of it if this is how it's going to keep going. Is that mistake? Oh, is he in the...
He's not anywhere near on the right side.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. England, fair to say, England haven't really adapted to how the maul's been refereed, or it's been harder for them to get that going?
They've not tried enough. I think the referees let a lot go around the breakdowns. People flying in from offside, people taking people a long way out of the room.
Yeah, in none of these three tests has the breakdown been particularly clean, has it? It's been just a fight, real fight, and that kind of, when two sides are struggling, well, that's why Australia with more directness have probably prospered, because they've been able to get that quick ball more easily. What you do get with bringing back players like Makavanapola, so England's pack here, they have got young guys on like Ezekwe, handful of caps, Jack Willis, handful of caps, Joe Hayes, handful of caps, but you've got Makavanapola, Courtney Laws,
Cowan Dickey. Oh, come on.
Oh. Marcus Smith won't mind not playing against Samu Karevi next week. Laws have just been a menace. We know how he's just carved out a reputation for being so hard when it comes to one-on-one tackles, but his
hit that
work on the
behind.
It's a long way forward, isn't it?
Look forward.
England's still absorbing pressure. They've done for a hell of a lot of this game coming into the final 5 minutes.
Smith and missed one. Come on. Don't know why he's come down the short side there.
England have a lot of jackalers on the pitch, And they really need one of them to make a big play here. Be some big tackle counts from England players when this is finished. And Billy Vunipola might.
Oh.
th phase, wow.
That's all right. If England have defended well, that's fine. That's fine.
Jeez, Australia is so direct. Is that an England penalty? Yep.
Yes.
Wow.
That's a big one.
Not sure it's Cowan-Dickie comes up with it. So the way that England have worked their bench, and it's easy to get all kind of clever with it in hindsight, but they have got a lot of jackalers on the pitch, and that is, jeez, I mean, all of them are 50-50 calls. Laws is there as well. Laws' jackaling's been phenomenal.
He's definitely holding it on.
It's just where the Cowan-Dickie's supporting his body weight there. It's 50-50. But as we've said in the first half, teams that buy a ticket win that lottery, don't they?
Do you know how to explain this to referees? You know how you can tell whether a player support his weight?
Take it away.
If you've got 6 studs in, you can support your weight, right? You get out to 4 studs and see whether you can support your weight. You get up to 2, it's impossible. So when you see someone on 2 studs, he's definitely not supporting his weight. It's anatomically impossible. I said, and even at 4, you're on the edge. 6, fine. But
sometimes with the really elite jackalers like David Pocock, you just see them in such a strong position, don't you, over it.
Now, lead this, kick it in the corner, kick it right, get it into touch for start off, drive it successively, keep driving it, punching it. Keep the ball. They've got to score a try.
So 3.5 minutes now after, that was pretty much 2 minutes of continuous defence. 2 minutes of continuous play, which takes a lot out of both sides.
Well, it was a great defensive set from England. How many phases was it? 14?
I think more. I think 17, 18. And you saw Australia sort of moving around, trying to try different ideas, stepping through the ruck with Hooper and Karevi. And England were, this is interesting, Vunivalu coming on.
It's a big unit, doesn't it, as I say?
Big unit, really rangy, got that kind of slingy offload. I think he's suffered a few injuries, which is kind of what slowed his emergence down. But again, one of those, and he's coming off. Is that Hodge coming off? Okay, so they'll move right to fullback, I imagine. So less than 3 minutes here, and England, predictably and sensibly, gone to them all.
He's in front of the back foot.
This is what you're saying earlier, Brian. I thought they were going to get a bit more joy from that. Well, they maybe will now.
That's all
so
right.
they got.
That's.
So they got set first.
No.
Didn't they? Well,
we got it back. Well,
so the first thing they've done there is kick towards Vunivalu, and it's you kick to kick, and there's space there. So the first thing they've done now with Vunivalu on the pitch is try and launch one towards him. It was under hit, so that's how Arundel got it back. But
if you're going to do that in the end, why not have several phases before?
I think
to run the clock down.
So the kick in to kick again can look horrendous, but if you think about when the winger's coming forward to take the ball and he misses it, that's what the space is vacated. That's the thing.
Yeah, but who's got the ball now?
Yeah, but it's a.
If you had the ball, they're not going to score.
But I guess it's a line out that they can disrupt. And
well, they haven't disrupted any line outs. And you've given them the ball to attack.
And here they go.
And now you're going to be scrambling in ways you wouldn't if you still had the ball driving them on your own, instead of kicking it away after the first time you've received it.
So England have spent how much of this second half, so how much of this last quarter defending?
Offside.
Yeah, they're lucky. Be lucky there if they get.
Hold him up. Oh, no, tackle. Yes, yeah.
So England, as we've said a lot, absorbing pressure here. Australia looking to score to go, and they're going wide.
Last play of the game, last phase of the game. That's it! Hold on!
Jack
He scored. Oh, yeah, I thought he had. Wait, don't.
This is composure. This is.
Gone!
So England in the opposition 22. And that's brilliant from Vunipola.
Yeah, got it. No, he's not got it.
Over the line. So now 20 seconds left. It's
So
going to have to be.
they drop the ball out. We catch it and kick it off.
They're going to have to go for quick line out, goal line drop out. Australia
No,
to try and get
you're
the
not
ball
allowed to have a
back.
quick drop out.
You've got to go 5, haven't you?
He's got. Well, you can't. No, you can't do it like a 22. They've got to kick it.
They've got to try and get it, but they've got to hang it and try and get
That's
it back.
it. As soon as it goes off.
Wouldn't be surprised if Australia get it back and get one more go, you know. Yep. Yep, there you go. Australia won it back. But that's it.
It went.
That's it, I think. Bit of confusion here. Owen Farrell, not surprisingly, thinks it's full time.
Yes, it had, yes. Yes, it is.
So England hung on there. Wow. That wild celebrations among the England players, and they've eked it out. So it's whether they. It's an odd game.
Odd series in those
Yeah.
ways, and the same questions as before.
Yeah.
But better to win them than not.
So let's have a think. So
Right, let's wrap this up.
these players that have, I think, huge series for Billy Vunipola.
Yep.
Huge series for him.
Yep.
Will Stewart, as we said, maybe slightly more understated, but the jury is out on
Freddie
a lot
Stewart.
of. Wrap it up then, Brian. Where do you feel England are?
I think they've taken. Look, they've got the positive of and the confidence from an away series win. The questions which were posed beforehand haven't been answered, but they wouldn't be answered anyway because all players aren't available and they weren't selected there. And that's what I wrote at the start. No matter what he does, he's not going to answer those questions. So all they were going to get from that, and it's not inconsiderable. They've won an away series down in Australia, and congratulations to them.
We've got more to write about then, at least.
More to write about them.
Nice one, mate.
It's been a lot more enjoyable than the Tory Party leadership contest, that's all I can say. Good night.